General Hospital spoilers reveal that as the General Hospital fandom reeled from the latest bombshell developments on screen, the off-screen drama began to stir a wave of deeper speculation, anxiety, and emotional unease. When Caitlin McMullen and Avery Pohl officially confirmed their joint participation in an upcoming live-acting masterclass and behind-the-scenes conversation, it immediately fueled a torrent of rumors that something monumental was looming just beneath the surface. Both actresses, so deeply embedded in the emotional DNA of Port Charles, were suddenly at the center of conversations not just about their performances, but about the fate of their characters. Avery, whose haunting portrayal of Esme had once captivated and terrified audiences in equal measure, had already walked her character to the edge of psychological disintegration and back. Her departure, hinted at through final, deeply ambiguous scenes, had left a void that viewers struggled to fill. And now, as this special event approached, fans began to wonder if Caitlin, too, was preparing her own quiet curtain call. For years, she had embodied the delicate strength and unraveling heartache of Willow with extraordinary restraint and vulnerability. Her emotional breakdowns, quiet resilience, and transformative journey had earned her a devoted following. But the silence behind the scenes, punctuated now by this sudden media engagement, suggested more than just a celebration of craft. It felt like the beginning of goodbye. The announcement itself was benign on the surface, a candid live stream hosted by soap opera veteran Holly Gagnier, designed to explore the emotional rigor and creative discipline behind daytime drama acting. Yet for longtime GH watchers, it read more like a coded transmission. Why now? Why both of them? Why focus so intensely on the emotional climax of past episodes rather than teasing future arcs? These questions echoed through message boards and fan groups, with some clinging to hope that the session would simply celebrate the actress's achievements, while others read the signs for what they were: the setting sun of another key chapter in Port Charles' history. And indeed, if Esme's exit had signaled the end of one psychodrama, the idea of Willow leaving represented a seismic shift, because Willow was not just a character. She was the final link tethering Michael to sanity, Nina to redemption, and even Carly to some semblance of grace. To remove Willow would be to unravel a web of emotional connections that had stabilized even the most volatile players in recent years. The very premise of the event, a dive into the most emotionally demanding scenes in recent GH memory, felt like a retrospective. As though the characters' journeys were being consciously closed in reverse, through reflection before resolution. Avery, when asked about Esme's descent into instability and near-maternal transformation, reportedly paused before admitting that sometimes letting go of a character requires walking away before the character falls apart completely. Her words, while vague, left a deep impact. And Caitlin, always private, offered a similarly enigmatic reply when asked about Willow's capacity to forgive Nina. She said there are some truths that can't be healed, only accepted, and sometimes, acceptance means leaving. That word, leaving, became the center of every whisper. It was no longer a matter of if but when. Insiders began speculating about scripts being rewritten, shooting schedules being adjusted, and producers moving quickly to fortify supporting storylines in preparation for a dual departure. The stakes were no longer just about Britt's empty grave or Jason's return. Now, the emotional stability of GH itself felt like it was on the verge of collapse. Willow had been more than just a nurse, more than just Michael's partner. She had been a moral anchor. Her presence had tempered Drew's darker impulses, softened Carly's manipulations, and even forced Nina into rare moments of sincerity. If she were to walk away, whether by death, departure, or some dramatic act of self-erasure, it would leave Michael in emotional ruins. Nina, already unraveling from her failed redemption arc, might spiral into a new darkness. And Carly, who had always used Willow's innocence as a shield against her own corruption, would be forced to confront herself in full. As fan communities theorized about possible outcomes, one prevailing prediction emerged, that Caitlin's exit would mirror Esme's in tone, ambiguous, tragic, but open-ended. Some believed Willow might choose to disappear, perhaps overwhelmed by the weight of betrayal, illness, or the emotional war that had been waged between Nina and Carly over her soul. Others feared a darker fate, that Willow, finally recognizing the toxicity of the environment around her, would be written into a collapse so complete it would serve as a cautionary tale to every other character. But what made the rumors harder to dismiss was the fact that even the show's own promotional materials had begun shifting away from Willow-centric narratives. Her scenes had grown quieter, her lines fewer, her presence more observant than active. It was the kind of subtle fade that longtime viewers had come to recognize as prelude to departure. In this context, the live stream wasn't merely a celebration. It was a memorial in motion. It was a love letter disguised as a workshop for the actresses involved. It was an opportunity to say things they couldn't say directly, to frame their exits in terms of gratitude and craft rather than contracts and farewells. And for the fans, it was a rare and painful gift, a chance to prepare. Because if Avery's departure had taught them anything, it was that silence is often the loudest warning. And now, with both actresses seated side by side, recounting the pain and pride of their most iconic scenes, viewers could see the unspoken truth in their eyes. The era was ending. Willow was leaving. And so, as the countdown to the event began, the online world braced itself for the inevitable. Blogs speculated about last scenes, editors raced to compile tribute reels, and fans dug through old scripts, searching for clues that might hint at an exit plan they could accept. Yet no one was truly ready. Because Willow's exit would not be like Esme's. It would not be a vanishing act or a descent into madness. It would be something softer, more devastating, more final. It would be the quiet death of hope. And as for what came after, that was a storm waiting on the horizon. Of all the changes sweeping through Port Charles, few have carried the weight and foreboding of what now looms between Willow and the reemergence of Esme. It began quietly, subtly, first with the announcement that Caitlin and Avery, the actresses behind Willow and Esme respectively, would join a special acting program focused on emotionally intense character arcs. At first glance, it seemed harmless, even celebratory, as if honoring the complexity of their characters and performances. But beneath that polished exterior, the deeper implications began to stir suspicion and speculation. The confirmation of their participation marked not just a behind-the-scenes tribute, but a subtle foreshadowing of profound narrative shifts soon to explode onto the canvas of General Hospital. The return of Esme, a figure both feared and misunderstood, whispered of chaos and control, of psychological warfare disguised as redemption. And it threatened to unravel the very identity Willow had struggled to reclaim. Port Charles was no stranger to comebacks, but this one felt different. It was strategic, calculated, a statement. And if Esme was truly coming back into the fold, the question no longer centered on what she wanted. It revolved around who would be pulled into her orbit and what they would sacrifice in the process. Willow, once the center of calm in a storm of Corinthos family drama, now found herself inching toward the abyss. Her transformation had been gradual. Like water rising under the floorboards, first grief over Wiley's chaos, then betrayal by Nina, and now a hollow emptiness left behind by Drew's collapse. With Drew's integrity shattered and her trust in everyone around her decaying, she had become haunted, withdrawn, and unervingly numb. Gone was the gentle nurse who once found meaning in healing others. In her place stood someone colder, someone who had seen too many lies, too much death, too many people rise from supposed graves. And now with Esme's possible return, something cracked deep within her. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Two broken young women, once exploited and discarded by the powerful forces of Port Charles, now poised to intersect once more, but with very different motives. Esme had once clawed for identity through manipulation and illusion. Willow had done it through obedience and self-sacrifice. Now both paths were collapsing in on themselves, creating a vortex of reckoning that could only end in blood or absolution. For Willow, the impending presence of Esme was a reminder of the system that had failed them both, the WSB's secrecy, the Quartermain privilege, the twisted protection of the Corinthos Empire. And most painfully, The lies Drew had spun while acting as her savior. Willow's spiral wasn't theatrical. It was quiet. Frighteningly quiet. A stare held too long in the mirror. A silence stretched too wide after a question from Michael. A coldness that seeped into every interaction with Nina, with Jason, even with Carly. It was not a breakdown, it was an awakening. She had been everyone's pawn for too long. Now, she would rewrite her narrative. And if that meant destroying some of the people who once claimed to love her, so be it. Esme's return might be the match, but Willow was already the gasoline. The town wouldn't see it coming. They never did with the quiet ones. Meanwhile, Jason, already disturbed by Britt's disappearance and torn by his loyalty to Sunny, could sense the undercurrents beginning to twist. He watched Willow closely, not with judgment, but with something like fear. He had seen that look before. On Britt, before she faked her death. On Robin, when she left to join the WSB. On Sam, when she stepped away from love to save herself. It was the look of a woman no longer tethered by guilt. Jason, for all his stoicism, knew danger when he saw it, and Willow, in her slow-burning grief, had become radioactive. But what could he do? He couldn't stop Esme from returning. He couldn't erase Drew's betrayal. And now, with Britt's empty grave taunting him and Liesl unraveling in his shadow. His grip on the people he once protected was slipping. Esme was just the symptom. Willow was the real disease, and if he didn't act fast, Port Charles might crumble from within. The true irony lay in the symmetry of it all. Esme, once thought dead or gone for good, now returned to a world less trusting, less forgiving, more fragile. She wasn't here to reclaim anything. She was here to observe, to record the descent of those who had tried to erase her. She saw Willow not as a rival, but as a reflection. They had been children once. Seeking love in all the wrong places, punished by fate and forged by manipulation. Now they were women, each capable of immense destruction. If Port Charles believed it could absorb both of them at the same time, it was sorely mistaken. One would rise. One would fall. And the streets would tremble. What began as a casting update, a press release about a simple live stream program, had morphed into something far more insidious. Fans speculated that Willow's future on the show was uncertain. Especially after her darkened demeanor, her isolation, and her steadily declining connection to Michael and Carly. Esme's reappearance was no longer a possibility, it was a catalyst. And Caitlin's participation in the acting showcase might very well be her farewell bow. If so, the writers were setting the stage for an unforgettable exit. One that would involve betrayal, self-reinvention, and perhaps even a partnership with Esme herself. Imagine it, Willow and Esme, once on opposite sides of Port Charles's moral compass. Joining forces to take down the very system that chewed them up and spit them out. It wouldn't be redemption. It would be revolution. With the WSB under scrutiny, Liesl destabilized. Jason torn between Britt and Willow, and Sunny barely clinging to control, the return of Esme might be the final crack in the dam. Port Charles had weathered explosions, poisonings, betrayals, and coups. But it had never seen what would happen if two broken, brilliant, manipulative women stopped playing defense. The town had trained them to survive. Now it would pay the price when they learned to conquer. And the first sign of that reckoning? A casting announcement buried inside a press release, easily dismissed by those not paying attention. But those who had lived through Helena's return, Victor's bioweapon, and Nina's courtroom meltdowns knew better. The quiet tremors always came first. Then the quake. In the days to come, Willow's fate would hang in the balance. Would she vanish into the same shadows that birthed Esme's legend? Would she burn everything down to start anew? And what of Esme, was her return sincere? Or merely a prelude to another twist, another trap, another unraveling of truth and fiction? One thing was certain, the axis of Port Charles was shifting. And those who survived would never see the world the same way again. As the tides of General Hospital shift toward a more suspense-laden and emotionally volatile landscape, the increasing visibility of Caitlin McMullen and Avery Pohl, both on and off screen, has become impossible to ignore. Their scheduled participation in a special live event focused on the art of daytime drama may appear innocuous on the surface, but for longtime viewers and story analysts, it reads more like a narrative breadcrumb, a symbolic torch-passing moment in the ever-changing hierarchy of Port Charles. And while both actresses have captivated fans with their powerhouse performances in vastly different roles, there's a deeper undertone at play, one that suggests Caitlin's Willow is preparing to exit the stage while Avery's Esme may be poised for a shocking resurgence. If this is indeed the case, it marks not just a shift in character trajectories but a full-scale transformation of thematic leadership on GH. Caitlin's portrayal of Willow has been nothing short of transcendent. From the early days of abuse and cult trauma to motherhood, cancer, and the ever-complex push and pull with Nina, Willow's journey has mirrored some of the most heart-wrenching and authentic arcs in daytime television. But in recent episodes, there's been an unmistakable tonal shift. The script now grants her more quiet solitude, moments of introspection rather than fierce dialogue. As if the writers are gently preparing her character, and the audience, for a significant emotional farewell. These scenes are no longer about building tension or conflict. They're elegiac, like soft musical notes fading into silence, suggesting that Willow is being written toward a spiritual or literal departure. The very fact that Caitlin is engaging in public discussion about how she prepared for emotionally taxing scenes only fuels this narrative. Such interviews tend to follow Emmy campaigns or character exits, as performers reflect on their most memorable moments. In this context, her presence alongside Avery and acting coach Holly Gagnier is less a celebration and more a symbolic bookend, closing a chapter that has defined General Hospital's emotional center for years. Meanwhile, Avery Pohl stands on the edge of narrative opportunity. Her absence as Esme has not diminished the character's presence in viewer speculation. On the contrary, the longer Esme stays away, the more viewers anticipate her return with heightened impact. Her previous arcs involved manipulation, trauma, memory loss, and unexpected motherhood, layering her with complexity and ambiguity that many modern soap villains lack. Esme's potential return isn't just about finishing a story, it's about igniting a new era. And Avery's presence at the acting symposium indicates that GH may be setting the stage for that ignition. If Esme returns just as Willow exits, the result would be seismic. A hole left by Willow's absence, graceful, nurturing, and morally centered, could be filled with Esme's unpredictable, reactive, and calculating presence. It would be a deliberate swap of light for shadow, a creative decision that mirrors the show's increasing tilt toward darker, more volatile storylines. Esme's re-entry into Port Charles would also destabilize existing dynamics. Could she threaten Trina's life again? Challenge Spencer from the shadows? Or worse, manipulate Nina? Desperate to regain a daughter figure after losing Willow? The psychological warfare would be unlike anything GH has recently explored. There's also a meta-dimension at play. With both actresses being featured in an emotionally introspective acting workshop, fans are given the rare opportunity to see the human beings behind the characters. And that transparency can serve dual purposes, increasing fan appreciation while also preparing them for dramatic change. When stars step forward like this, it's often in tandem with a dramatic shift in their characters' roles, either expanding for one, ending for another, or reinventing both. In this case, it feels like a torch is being passed between two performers at very different stages in their GH journeys. From a narrative standpoint, Willow's possible exit could be handled in numerous ways. She could leave Port Charles to pursue peace or healing, especially if her health declines or her relationships fracture beyond repair. She could also be written off through tragedy, perhaps an accident or illness relapse, which would send ripple effects across the Corinthos family, driving Nina to the edge, shattering Michael's resolve, and perhaps even compelling Sonny to confront the moral cost of his empire once again. Conversely, Esme's return could unfold explosively. She might reappear under a new name, faking a new life until a shocking reveal disrupts the town. Or she could be lured back by danger, perhaps manipulated or used by larger criminal forces seeking leverage against the Cassidines or Corinthos clan. Whatever her point of entry, it would not be subtle. Esme was never designed for quiet storylines, and her return would be calibrated for maximum impact, both emotionally and structurally. This dynamic tension between Willow's soft departure and Esme's chaotic return illustrates the broader transformation occurring within General Hospital's storytelling DNA. The show is veering towards psychological complexity, morally gray characters, and dramatic reinvention. It's a place where loss begets danger, and where redemption is as volatile as betrayal. In that context, Avery and Caitlin's public alignment is more than a press tour, it's a narrative fulcrum. One character's fall could be the launchpad for another's rise. And fans are witnessing the groundwork for that shift in real time. As these two actresses take the spotlight together, they are not only celebrating the power of performance, they are signaling a narrative evolution. Fans of General Hospital would do well to pay attention, because behind every live interview, every anecdote, and every reflection lies the heart of a much bigger story. Willow may soon find peace far from Port Charles. And in that silence, Esme may return to burn it all down.